Hi everybody, thanks for tuning in today to the Dahlia Society. Today I have got a brand new review and it was actually released just this week, and it's the By Hand London Hannah dress. Before we begin today, don't forget, if you haven't already subscribed to my channel and you want to get your weekly updates, click on the little bell and that will keep you up to date with my episodes. Another little sneaky peek, we've got a little surprise coming up in the next couple of weeks, is a review that I'm collaborating with Tamlin from Sewn on the Tyne and Keely from Voiceover Creative, and they are making the Shelby dress / romper with me. We're all doing a different version of that, so I hope you can join us all very shortly to see how that turns out. Today I'm coming to you from my garden, set here amongst the beautiful jasmine. The smell is amazing. I wish you could actually be here to smell it, so if I can wash some through the screen, I'm sure you'll get it. Well, we're really in the thick of spring here in Australia, and the last few days we have had a quite a heat wave quite early. Normally this time of year we sort of the season slowly starts picking up into the mid to high 20s. We've had about 3 or 4 days in the mid to high 30s, which is just too much too quickly. So we've had a day of rain yesterday, which actually helped the garden quite a lot. So it's a good chance actually to look into the wardrobe and see what I needed to wear for the upcoming sort of summer weather. And I'm very fortunate that this week the Hannah dress was released. By Hand London, you may know, is a fantastic pattern company that specializes in probably more, I would say, the really ultra feminine, dressy, polished look. They've been around for quite some time. A lot of their patterns were very popular, especially when I started about 4 or 5 years ago. Their paper patterns were really high collectible items. They came in beautiful pink packaged envelopes with hand sketch drawings, and when they got them out of print, people were going mad trying to find the Anna dress, I think it was called, which was probably one of their most popular designs. So the Anna dress, I would say I'd made quite a couple of those, so I knew I was going to be quite happy with the style of this, because I knew that their grading and their drafting of patterns was always spot on. A few years ago now, they actually went out of the printed patterns. They started to go into more of the PDFs, which is a lot more accessible for a lot of people. So if you can pick up a printed By Hand London pattern, you're doing really well, because as I say, they're really sought after. Now, By Hand London is run by a couple of very prominent ladies on Instagram, one of which is Elisa Lex, and her Instagram is fantastic. She has a lot of tutorials, especially with bodice fitting. She does bodice fitting classes, and she is well into all of that very tailored fitted design dresses. You may like to look on their blog, on their website. You'll find a lot of tutorials and sew-alongs on the By Hand London blog. So we're going to talk about the Hannah dress. The Hannah dress calls for a light to medium weight fabric with a lot of drape. Usually that means it would either be like a cotton or cotton lawn or rayon, a crepe, something with a lot of flowy, sort of a little bit of body but a lot more drapiness to it. With this dress in particular, it works really well with a linen, a lightweight linen as well. The one I've got on here is a linen cotton blend. I think it might have a little bit of Tencel or lyocell in it as well, and that to me is brilliant because it keeps a lot of those creases away. I still want the drape, and I don't want the stiffness of the normal full linen, so if you can get a blend, it will lend itself really nicely to the pattern. The Hannah dress can either be made in a dress with just a normal short sleeve, which is like this one here. You can make it in a tulip sleeve, which is a little crossover, and I made that in the tunic style top, which I'll put some photos up for you to have a look at there. And also in the bishop sleeve, which is a favourite of Elisa Lex's. I know they've done quite a few patterns in the past. The Alex dress was one I made. It had the really nice bishop sleeve, very easy to fit because it has the tie back. So it's not a lot of fitting issues and zips and things like that. So it's a really easy pattern to make. By Hand London do sizing from a US 2 and a UK 4 up to a US 20, UK 24. So they've just extended their size range, which is great. I decided to looked at my Anna dress and I thought I'd look at what I'd made in the past for that. And I was bordering on a 14 to 16. So I thought I'd make the UK 16, which is a US 12 version. It's very hard when you haven't made a pattern before and it's a fitted one to know how much room they're going to give you and how much ease is in the pattern. So I thought I'd go that little bit on the bigger side first. I actually think I could have even gone up a little bit more, maybe to the 18. The 16 is just bordering on fitting me nicely, but I've got a D cup size, so if I had any bigger than a D cup, I think you'd need to do a full bust adjustment. So look out for that. Just make sure that you get your bust fitting right, and because it's a wrap dress, you don't want it to be too gapey at the front. So always probably go size up a little bit if you're in doubt with that. I would advise making a twill just in case. You want to make sure you get your fitting spot on with such a fitted bodice. Don't take any risk with that, especially if you've got some nice fabric to use. You want to make sure that you don't ruin it. So if you've got any cotton or lightweight fabrics lying around, just even make the bodice twill up first. You don't need to worry about the skirt as much because the wrap comes from around the middle. The skirt's quite full. Now this dress I'm wearing here, I made a size, as I said, size UK 16. I did it with 2 meters of fabric. This was a 140 centimeter width fabric, so I did it with 2 meters. It said to use about 2.3 meters, and that was more for a midi length. Well, this is just below my knee. It's a really good length on me. So if you're looking at what to use with fabric, if you wanted to make the bishop sleeve, for example, you're probably going up to about 3.5 meters. If you haven't got quite enough fabric and you're not sure about the sizing, I would suggest making the tunic style shirt. I made one of those and it turned out lovely. I made it in a linen as well, linen cotton blend. That way you can correctly measure up your bodice and get that fit perfect before you go into making the dress. Now, with the construction of the dress, I had quite a lot of issues. I looked at it and thought, oh, yeah, it's a beginner pattern. It should be quite easy to whip up in a couple of hours. You know, those projects that you take on sort of later on at night and you think, I'll whiz through this quite easily, and you're getting more and more tired as the night goes on and you start making silly mistakes. Well, that was me. I thought I'd whip it up really quickly and easily. I got the bodice all made up. When it came to putting the ties on, be very careful with this. Now, in the instructions, her instructions are really well written. It was just my silly fault for being so tired. I put the ties on in all the right spots, I thought, because you've got 4 ties. You've got 2 internal ties and 2 external ties. When I got to the end of the garment and I'd made it all up, I went to tie it around and I realised the gather had to be on the front. The underneath part of the skirt, there's an overlap and an underneath lap. So you need to make sure you put the right one in the right position. So the one that goes around the front has the gathering. The one that goes underneath, she wanted to keep it nice and clean and neat. So she didn't want any gathering on that. So one piece is flat. So your overlap part has got the gathering. So I had that all correctly done. But when I went to measure to tie up my ties, I realized that the ties weren't there and I'd made a mistake and put them in reverse. So look at your wrong and right side of your pattern when you're sewing on your ties and make sure you put it on in the exact right spots, or you'll be like me and you'll make a mess and have to unpick the ties and start again. The ties were very time consuming, very finicky because they're really skinny. There's 4 of them. I first made up a pair of them and I realized I had to do 2 pairs. So you've got 4 ties. So of course, each tie being really narrow, you need to turn the ties inside out, which is a pain to do. I have got a loop turner, but of course, being that linen sort of sticky fabric, it's too hard to do that way. So I end up using a chopstick and a pair of tweezers. And you know, you're looking at, you know, it might have taken me a good 20 minutes, probably 15 to 20 minutes for each tie. So that's very time consuming. And also too, if you haven't got good movement of your fingers, if you suffer from arthritis or any problems with using your fingers, it can get quite painful to be using your fingers in that way and to be pulling through. So I would suggest, if you have any issues there, I would suggest using a bias binding for the internal ties, just because it'll save you a little bit of time. If you want that really polished look to your dress, so you just have to put that little bit more time into it and make it out of the same fabric as the dress. So you're going to have to bear with it. I decided to make my own bias binding to match the dress as well, because I like that neat finish, especially if you've got, you know, quite a sort of gapey front top. So that's another thing too. You need to make the bias binding out of your own fabric. I would suggest buying one of those little bias binding makers. They are the best things to have in your sewing kit. You need to just cut the right measurement of the bias binding, and make sure you cut your bias binding on the angle against the grain too. You got to go sideways. You don't want to be going up and down, because you need to be able to curve it. If you cut on the angle, the bias binding, you'll be able to manipulate it a lot easier. So you cut the right width, and then you run it through your little metal bias binding little maker, and I'll pop a little picture up of that. They're quite easily found in most haberdashery shops. You run it through that, and as it's coming at the other end, you get your iron and you press, and the edges will just fold in on themselves. So it saves a lot of time. And it is nice to have that matching bias binding. Make sure when you're joining your pieces of bias binding that you do it on the correct angle as well, because you don't want it to be like an L or a square shape when you join them up. I'll pop a little link about how to do that. Another issue I had too with making the tunic style top, or the little peplum top, was the tulip sleeves. I had the overlap and underlap has to go the right direction, because you'll see the shape at the side of the sleeve. It has to be the correct way to get that tulip effect. So there's a lot of things that can save you time if you just take the time to look at the instructions and triple check the as I say, things like the tulip sleeve placement. What had happened, I had them done the right way, but the sleeve one was left, one was right, and I'd swap them over. Make sure that you have the correct sleeve on the correct side. 2 notches are at the back, 1 notch are at the front. Don't swap them over like I did, because your tulip will be facing the incorrect way. So I love the dress, but it did cause me quite a lot of swearing. As soon as you try and rush through a project, you will definitely come up against problems. And when you're tired, that time of night is probably not a great time to start sewing. So a couple of little cheat tips. Don't forget the dental floss for the gathering. Don't forget you've only got gathering on the front part of the dress and the back part of the dress, not the underneath flap. That will save, as I say, a lot of bulk. I actually didn't bother putting in the pockets in the dress. That, as I say, I didn't have enough fabric to do that. I didn't find that I really needed them. I don't really like a lot of bulk around the hip part of the area with pockets. Some people love pockets, some people hate them. It's just really a personal preference, and you can decide what to do there. It's not an overly huge pattern. I would probably go up if you're wondering whether to go up or down, because with the wrap tie, it's something you can do. You can adjust the fit quite easily and tie it a bit tighter if it's a little bit on the larger side. I love the way the patterns come up. It's gorgeous. It's as I say, very feminine, very like a tea party style dress, something you can dress up or down. And I hope I have helped you and prevented you from making the same mistakes I have. The fabric I'm wearing today was from Spotlight. The tunic style top was also from Spotlight in their cotton linen range. And as I say, if you're wanting to do the linen but you don't want that crumpled effect, look for a blended linen or a lyocell blend in the linen, just to keep it a little bit more drape. So thank you everyone for tuning in today, and I will be back to you hopefully sometime this week for another review. I'm Kristen. See you next week. Bye for now.